Hi everyone, I'm Kayleen Pendarvis, and today we have a crime thriller that we are going to review. And the title of it is called The Dark Side of South Beach, and the author's name is Eric Kelly. Hi Eric. So the first thing I want to do is I want to just jump right on into this cover. Is absolutely amazing. To me, it stands out. It's more like a pop here, and the color of it is just wonderful. We have this beautiful downtown area, shows the thriving city and so on and so forth. And we've all seen downtown and everything like that, but well, for me particularly, neck of the woods, trees, okay? And definitely nothing as elaborate as this. We even see the reflection down here at the bottom, so that's awesome as well. It's actually here reflecting off of a kind of like a bus here, so that's going through, and you could really barely see that, but it's like the city is just moving here, elsewhere, in all types of different directions. So on the back here, we also have some pretty cool things. Now, I want to say here, you can barely see it, but there's, some type of hotel area, or just some type of community, just a few little random cards here. So it's kind of like the author wants you to know the difference between this part, okay, and then this part. All right. So you want you to focus in on, I would think, just from looking at it, really just both, but just first impressions of this, I'm like, okay, he really wants us to know there's a difference between the two. Maybe the main characters, they spend a lot of time here, but mostly they spend a lot of time here. So I thought that was very, very interesting, super cool. I can't forget here, this is a very professional picture of Eric, so really like this picture. That's super awesome. So I just want to read a little bit of it, just so you guys can have a idea here. So the dark side of South Beach. So Miami is a city known for its beautiful beaches and soft sand where tourists flock by demand. 3 childhood friends live the real untold life across the bridge. Okay. Well, there's a bridge here, right here. Okay. So that's cool. Across the bridge where evil hearts, greed, and lies rock the dark skies. Yeah, dark. Okay, cool. So far so good. And little do we know that prayers is the only thing that will save their lives. Wee-Bey, Nod, and G1 run around Miami, living life the only way they were taught, in the streets. So this story may resonate with some people who are familiar with the challenges these young black males face on a daily basis, living amidst drugs, crime, and temptation. Who will be blessed in all the mess that these young men create? And I can tell you, some interesting activity going on here. These 3 characters that were mentioned here, which are the protagonists in the story, Wee-Bey, Nod, G1, total troublemakers, okay? They're not really do-gooders, I would say. They're just hooligan characters that we follow, okay? This is well known and well specified here by the author. So they do sell drugs. They do not promote a society in any way. They disobey their parents. They associate themselves with prostitution. They have no standards, and they sneak into strip clubs. So, and also there are more characters to note. The women, totally contentious women. There are some parts in the story. There's a particular part that stood out to me where they were at school, and the main character, one of the main characters, was attempting to buy lunch for one of the other girls in the book, and she just had this kind of just a way about herself that was, I would say, very, very colorful. But he found that very interesting, and needless to say. But they got into the young lady actually got into an altercation with another young lady, and there was just kind of going back and forth with that. So the women in the book just definitely they stood out with their flavorful, colorful, all of that type personality. Now, the first 10 pages, and really too, I want to just note this is more what the interior kind of looks like here, and then this is pretty good here. But the first 10 pages, my thoughts, honestly, it was hard to pull myself into the story and into any plot or real purpose. It was really hard to attach myself to a favorite character. And again, we had Wee-Bey, not Ji-won, and they were roll dogs, really. So they hung around each other. They did everything together. It was a pretty interesting system. They were drug dealers. That was very evident. And I actually kind of I was afraid. I don't know why. I'm not even here, but some of the activity that they were doing as far as like the selling of the drugs and how they were switching out between each other. One would be watching until this time, and then the other one will come and relieve, and then here comes another individual that's kind of rolling down the street, and you're like, who is that? And so I just didn't want anything to pop off. So I kind of found myself at least on that level of what kind of things are we really going to see here. I can say though, even though I had a hard time attaching myself to a favorite character, I leaned towards Wee-Bey because I guess the author really leaned towards that character more. And even though they were all adolescents and they were all just kind of doing what they want to do, Wee-Bey seemed to be kind of like the more mature mind, even though he himself had opportunities to be more mature, but he was more the one that the author, I think, just kind of wanted us to kind of bring the other two together, and he was the center person there. With this book, I can say that I encountered a very interesting character dialogue. Now, for me, it wasn't something that I could really, I've heard this type of speaking, but it was a little difficult for me to follow along. It really know the importance of the way these types of terms were actually being used. Some people may call it slang. Some people may call it ebonics, different things like that. And it's the way it was presented. So yeah. So there were some wise people in there, such as parents and so on and so forth. So kind of like this here, page 71. So yeah, I remember that, and I ain't slipping. Okay, so that right there, I don't know. Yeah. And then we have things like, damn, what's up, lips? That's the type you on. So just for example, so that you can kind of get what I'm saying when I'm saying that. Okay. I did remain curious, asking myself, is this the life of all teens or some? So we've established that they're drug dealers. I already thought that someone was going to die in the very beginning of the book. So, and I'm glad, that things worked out. But that was my initial thoughts. I didn't really like all of the grammatical errors here. It kind of made it more difficult to speed read. And those were some of the things that I did initially notice in the first 10 pages. Now, there were some things that I did like. So I can say that the dialogue, it was realistic. Even though it was sometimes over the top in that slang, I can imagine that people really communicate with each other in this way. There was a dynamic use of slang, and even though it was, again, out of my element, it was still easy to follow. and there was occasional comic relief. There was some casual commentary from the narrator as well, and he would just kind of inject himself in there just to kind of flow things along. That was appropriate. The author really, to me, showed another world of Gaines, what would be wayward adolescence, thug life. Okay, so yeah, if I'm not used to that, this right here will take you 100% fully there. Okay. Now, there were some things that I would say were some opportunities or some unfortunate low light. I think that, and I'm going to set this down. I think that the setting could have been more developed, meaning that, you know, I really didn't get a lot of visual from, you know, of the characters' line of sight. In that, what's around them? Okay, you know, they're in this neighborhood, and we're really not really giving a whole description of said neighborhood, for example. And that's very important to do in order for me to actually put myself where they are. The dialogue, though I can say it was believable, it failed to display feeling. So I didn't know really, you know, how the characters felt when they were saying something. It was kind of just saying it, and that's it. Okay. There was no facial expressions that I could possibly observe or visualize. There was no feeling from the other characters. There were no gestures or movement, any form of posture that they're taking at this time. So those things are actually what would help me to actually, you know, get into and maybe really identify certain characters have these certain feelings and typical gestures consistently. And when I'm thinking of this character, I can say, okay, this is, in my mind, this is what they are typically doing, per what the author wants you to think about them, not what I am just making up. Now, I can say that this book definitely needed some more verbs, adverbs, adjectives, more description of various different things here. The speakers, they did not have their own line. It was difficult to know who was talking, and I'll explain. There would be times where there's 2 or 3 people speaking in one paragraph. So that really threw me. I found myself stopping each and every single time. It would have been nice, and nothing wrong with what they were saying, but it would have been nice to have those lines separate. Each person that's speaking needs to have their own separate, line and segment there. And so, yeah, I can say there was an overwhelming amount of grammatical errors. And 2, something else that I noticed here, I think that, whereas it was nice to have the chapter titles, it wasn't needed. I think just maximizing the chapters here, or the chapter, for example, here, chapter 33, just making that bigger here. I just think that the chapter titles could have been omitted. So set that back down here. Overall, in the book, there was an inordinate amount of ghetto in thought, word, and deed. Now, again, this is a lifestyle that they do have, and it is a realistic lifestyle, but we do have to say here that it stood out. Now, my opinion of the plot overall, it was kind of relatively slow in development, but it did pick up later on, and despite, the things that were causing me to pause, I was able to make it through. And, overall, it led with a pretty decent ending. So you might actually like that. The discrepancies that I discovered, I think that I more or less believe that their behavior was learned and not taught. It more or less was a choice for these 3 main characters to deal drugs, to do the crime, and more or less partake in temptation. And so that's something that you can just kind of take from and just assume that, yes, this is really, really taught, okay, and not learned. And that environment that they actually live in, it seems to promote that. So my final judgments. Is it ready for the shelf, or does it need a little bit more work? I think that it definitely needs a little bit more work. Was I confused at any point while reading? Yes. Did I care about the characters? No. Did it have a compelling plot? I wouldn't say. Was the dialogue believable? Yes. And is there any questionable, profane, graphic content? Yes. Throughout that, who would I recommend this book to? Well, the characters are very uneducated, this shows, and there was really no established point to the plot. There was a poor representation of a healthy Black culture, and honestly, I was uncomfortable with some of the things that were being said, though it was colorful. I would recommend this to people who are into just learning about youth, or learning about society that may be different from their own. But I can say that reading this book would promote some stereotypes. Now, if it were toned down, perhaps that would be different. Now, for your book clubs and comments down below, if you so choose to check it out, what feelings did this book evoke for you? And if you're wondering why I critique, check out my book, Secrets of Their Shadow Hearts and 74 Tears on File. They can be found on our self-published bookstore, Amazon.com. That gives you time to go purchase the book, read it, and make your very own critique. So please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye.